Hi, I'm Lawrence Todd at Design 911, and today I'm going to be giving you a tech talk on shock absorbers. Now, Bilstein is a company that has been around since 1873, but they didn't start off making shocks. In fact, they started off manufacturing window hinges. In 1954, they made their first shock absorber. This was the first gas-pressured shock. Since 1954, they continued making shock absorbers and have become one of the world's leading manufacturers in shock absorbers, creating some of the best shocks out there. Porsche picked up on this and have pretty much been using Bilstein shocks since the beginnings of their cars. And more recently, you'll be hard pushed to find a Porsche that comes off their production line today that doesn't have a Bilstein shock on it. In front of me on this table, I've got a range of different Bilstein shocks. And if you have a 964 or onwards, some of these shocks might be looking quite familiar to you if you've ever looked under the wheel arch of your car. Here in front of me, I have some B4 Bilstein shocks. Now, these are the shocks which are fitted pretty much as standard to any Porsche from 964 onwards. Okay, this one here is an OE shock. Its design is for comfort. It's not the harshest shock in the world. It's going to nicely absorb the energy from your springs, and it's not going to give you like the most harsh ride. Here is another B4 shock, but this one is an OEM shock. If you're not sure what the difference is between the OE and the OEM, OE being original equipment and OEM being original equipment manufacturer, then check out this video somewhere up here where we explain the differences between OE and OEM parts. These are identical, this one just being an OE part and this one being an OEM part. Both of these B4 shocks, they both have wires coming out the top of them. You can actively change the damping. In the Porsche world, that is called PASM, Porsche Active Suspension Management. That is what these wires are for, to change the damping of the shock. If your car isn't equipped with PASM, you can still buy these B4 shocks, but they just come without the wires. First of all, we recommend that if you are replacing a shock, you replace both of them at the same time. If one of them has worn out, it's a very good chance that the other one is about to wear out as well. They typically get the same amount of use. So if for whatever reason you do need to replace a shock, you have various different options available to you. You can go like for like replacement with a B4, whether that's replacing as an OE part from Porsche or an OEM part directly from Bilstein. If you would like to upgrade your Porsche suspension, perhaps you want a more sporty feel with slightly stiffer suspension to give you better handling. As I said, the B4 is a like-for-like replacement to the original kind of capabilities of the car. If you want to upgrade that to make it more sporty, then you can upgrade from a B4 Bilstein to a B6 Bilstein. Now, physically, this is exactly the same. There are no other mods that you have to change to your car other than taking your old shock off and putting your new shock on. These two shocks, the B4 and the B6, are physically, they're identical. The only difference is their damping characteristics. The B6 it's a harder shock, so the ride's going to feel more stiff. It is going to feel harder. It's going to feel more bumpy. You'll feel the potholes. You'll feel any kind of changes in road surface. To demonstrate the difference in damping between the B4 and the B6, we have two additional shocks here, which again, they're Bilstein shocks. One of these is a B4 and one of these is a B6. So these are off a different type of car, but hence they look different. But they are the same. Well, one of them's a B4, one's a B6, and again, physically they look identical, but their damping characteristics are different. Let's see if you can tell which is which. Right, here we go. Can you tell which is which? So one on my right was a lot quicker to rebound, so that's the softer shock. So this one is the B4. This one on my left hand, it took a lot longer to rebound. It's a much stiffer shock and is the B6. If you want a sporty feel, you want that harder suspension, but you also want to lower your car, then instead of buying the B6 Bilstein, you can upgrade to a B8 Bilstein. Now, this is very, very similar to the B6 in the fact that it has the same damping capabilities. They are just as stiff as one another. You're going to get the same harder driving feel. You're going to be able to have better control, etc. If you notice here, the difference between where the spring sits on this plate to the top of the shock here is a lot shorter than the difference in height between where the spring sits on the base plate here to the top of this shock. The difference in the height of the B8 allows you to lower your car by around about 20 to 30 mil. Unlike the B4 and the B6 though, if you do want to use the B8, unfortunately it's not just a like-for-like replacement in that you take your old shock out and put your new shock in. If you want to go for that lower ride height, you're also going to have to change your springs to slightly shorter springs, which Design 911 also sell. If you have Porsche's MO30, in theory, you can get away with just replacing the shock, although Porsche's MO30 only has a spring which is 10 mil shorter than standard, and Bilstein recommend that you use springs that are around about 20 to 30 mil shorter. If the B8 doesn't quite do it for you, there is still another option for you. You can go to the B16. Now, the B16 is all singing, all dancing. This is a really super duper sporty option. These shocks are both adjustable in their damping and they're also adjustable in their height so that you can have variable ride height depending on where you set the base plate on this spring. You change the relative position to raise or lower the car. So these shocks also have an adjustable dial on them. This one for the front suspension's on the bottom and on the rear suspension it's on the top. And it's the PSS-10. That 10 meaning that there's 10 different detents or 10 different settings that you can set for your damping ability, making it harder or softer depending on how you want to use the car. These B16s come in two variations. You get the PSS-10, which is these in front of me, and you also get the Damptronics. Damptronics are very, very similar to these, except for the fact that they also have a wire hanging out of them, allowing you to use PASM, Porsche's active suspension management. So, if you have got a later 911 from 964 that are using Bilstein shocks that look similar to these are your options if you want to either replace them because one's worn out or broken, or if you want to upgrade them. You go for the B4, which is a like-for-like replacement from the original equipment and will set your Porsche to its standard kind of driving specifications. If you want a little bit more of a sporty feel, you can go for the B6. If you want sporty feel and a slightly lowered ride height, you can go for the B8. And if you want fully adjustable height and damping, you can go for the B16. So if you are looking to either replace the existing shocks on your car for, again, standard B4s, or you'd like to upgrade your shocks, you can head to design911.com. On the website, if in the top bar you specify your car, the model and type, click Save Vehicle. Then on the left-hand side, if you scroll and select Suspension and Axle, you'll then be presented with a grid layout. Here you'll find either front shocks or rear shocks respectively. Select either one, whichever you're looking to purchase. From that menu, you can then select Bilstein Standard, and that will present you with the Bilstein B4 like-for-like replacement that your car had from factory. If you would like to upgrade your shocks to either the B6, the B8, or the B16, again, if you put your vehicle in the top bar, click Save Vehicle, and then in the left-hand navigation menu, if you scroll down to where it says Suspension Upgrades, you'll then be presented with a grid layout of all the different suspension upgrades available for your car. If you scroll through this list, you'll then come across the B6s, the B8s, and the B16s that are suitable for your vehicle. If you have any questions about which shock is right for your car, maybe whether you should be going for a slightly harder suspension, lowered suspension, or the swinging all dancing, adjustable ride height and damping, don't hesitate to get in touch with the team at Design 911. You can either email them, call them, or get on the chat. They're always happy to help. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next Tech Talk.